From the KUDZUKIAN studios in Memphis, Tennessee, it's iConversation.
Elliot Perry, otherwise known as Socks.
Man, thank you. How you guys doing?
Mr. Earl the Pearl Monroe.
Hey, thank you. Nice to be with you guys.
Glad to have Mr. Allen Houston.
Trying to stay warm up here in New York.
I hear you. Personality extraordinaire, Mr. Scoop Jackson.
I appreciate the encore.
Mr. Michael Ray Richardson.
What's up, man? Glad to be here, brother.
A 3-time NBA All-Star, the one, the only, Detlef Shrimp.
Howard and Larry, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be on the show.
iConversation. iConversation. iConversation.
Hello and welcome to R&R on Sports on the KUDZUKIAN Network. I'm Howard Robertson.
And I am Larry Robinson. What's up, Howard?
Oh, listen to you.
Hey, man, I'm
Didn't
trying
you
to
have more to say about yourself?
No, not really, man.
The greatest of all, the GOAT.
At some point, that becomes understood. So, right now, I want everybody to know.
So, America already knows this.
Yeah, but, if they want to access you and I, they need to go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartMedia, Stitcher, all that TuneIn app, all of that stuff. So, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, okay. Now, I know these shows. Let's start out. We got a fantastic show, by the way, but let's start out with this. I got a question for you. I know these shows are supposed to be evergreen, which means, y'all, that you can hear them anytime and they're always fresh and new. But we just had a little thing called the Final Four, and I got to talk about this. I want to get your take on it. Where there was a very interesting dynamic throughout the entire NCAA tournament, and Sister Jean. Dynamic was
Sister Jean.
Sister. Yeah, she lasted the entire tournament.
The entire tournament.
But beyond Sister Jean, you had
Beyonce.
Very high.
Beyonce wasn't.
Or very low seeded teams that just completely came out the box and didn't understand their role.
No, they actually upset the apple cart
and beat the fool out of very, very highly.
Well, I thought you was about to say that other 4-letter word. We'll just start with the F.
I know where I am.
Okay,
but beat other higher ranked teams. What do you attribute this?
I attribute it to this. See, listen. When you think about Duke, when you think about North Carolina, when you think about University of Kentucky, when you think about Kansas, these teams fill themselves with particularly one and done players. You know what I'm saying?
You're going to go there.
So it's one and done players. But so what you have is a situation where you have a lot of young players. You have a young player. Now Duke's getting there. No, think about it. They got like 2-3 players going this year. Only other than Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen is the last. He's the last dinosaur. He's Jurassic Grayson. Jurassic Grayson. That's what we have with Grayson Allen. So anyway, what you have is a lot of young players, but in these other programs, they tend to develop players. So they end to have some sophomores, juniors, and more seniors than typical. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so the seniors grow up, but see, seniors grow up and they like grown men. You be like 22 years old, and then you like got some grown men. And so
you're saying these little young freshmen and maybe sophomores.
Yeah, they get a little light in their pants there.
Scoop Jackson.
Super Scoop.
ESPN.
Super Scoop.
Absolutely. Be back after this.
Riffin' on Jazz.
I'm Howard Robertson, one of your hosts for Riffin' on Jazz. Riffin' is your weekly visit with friends where we dive all in to that classic African-American art form called jazz. So don't miss Riffin' with me and my man Melvin Massey every week on your favorite broadcast and podcast platforms.
Riffin' on Jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN!
Artivism, funky politics, R&R on sports, neighborhood connect, blues in the basement, riffin' on jazz. Your three black chicks, best in blue. KUDZUKIAN, KUDZUKIAN.
iConversation, 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 iConversation.
Welcome to ICONversation here on R&R on Sports. And as you know, an icon is an image. And today the image is a very, very successful sports commentator on ESPN. And his name is Scoop Jackson. Scoop, welcome back to R&R on Sports.
Good to be back on with you all.
What you been up to, Scoop?
Look, man, in all honesty, I'm just trying to stay busy. That's all it is. Just taking whatever work plays off. You know, just doing the regular thing. Nothing that I haven't already done. It's nothing against or nothing different than my regular wheelhouse.
Okay.
You know, I tell people all the time, the schedule I have, it's like working at McDonald's back in the day. If you ever worked at McDonald's, you had to go in every week to see what days you work.
Yeah, what day you working this week?
Yeah, right, exactly. That's kind of the way it is. I can go 3-4 weeks without doing anything as far as movement is concerned, and then
the checks still come though, right?
I'm not even home, you know. So it depends on the projects that we're working on and where they're going to send me, what ideas we come up with. You know, it's always the same.
What's the most prominent project at this point?
Doing this book in chapters, and every time I get a break to try to really get in and finish like some real chapters on this book, some other work comes up and pulls me away from it. But the focus now is to finish this book I'm working on. Politics and protest movement that operates inside of sports. Especially current issues that have happened over the last couple of years. You know, looking at, the state of the NFL, looking at, doing something on Colin Kaepernick, doing something on, right now I'm trying to finish up this chapter on analytics, and it's basically called, the numbing of numbers. You know, how basically...
The numbing of numbers.
Yeah, that's what
I love alliteration.
Right,
I love that.
right.
Larry doesn't know what that is, but...
Focusing strictly on numbers is basically numbing our sisters to the, soul and culture and creativity of the game.
Say that.
Especially basketball.
When is it scheduled for release?
Whenever I get a bid on a publishing company settling in on whether they want to publish the book or not, then I can tell you when it's going to come out. But right now, we're in the shopping stage.
Cool. Well, listen, this is ICONversation on R&R on Sports, and we're speaking with ESPN extraordinaire journalist. Extraordinaire.
What kind of word is that?
Man, I'm making up words. I'm Don King today. Scoop Jackson. Robert Scoop Jackson from Chicago, and we will be right back after these messages.
Hey, this is your guy, DC. Funky Politics. We're back. A brand new season, brand new shows, brand new guests. We're going to do it just right. Right here on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Artivism, Funky Politics, R&R on Sports, Neighborhood Connect, Blues in the Basement, Riffin' on Jazz. Your three black chicks, best in blue. KUDZUKIAN, KUDZUKIAN.
Thanks for staying with us. ICONversation, and we are talking to Scoop Jackson. Scoop, we are based, as you know, out of Memphis, Tennessee, and we are seeing so much activity relative to MLK, as it is called here, MLK 50.
Right.
And that is reflecting back and commemorating what happened in 1968. I want to talk a little bit about, and this is what you just said your book is about, a portion of your book is about. I want to talk to you about what you think about, here's what we're seeing down here. What we're seeing down here from a corporate standpoint is a whole lot of folk trying to get on the right side of history.
Right side of Jesus.
Right,
to get right side of Jesus.
And I was here. I was here in 1968, so I know which side they were on then. And now they're sponsoring stuff and all on the right side, trying to get on the right side, and they were all with King all along and all of that.
Which is a lie. You know that better.
Which is a huge lie. 1968 will be the commemoration of another major thing, too, and that was that little act of protest in Mexico City on the Olympic medal stand. 50 years for that, too, coming up. Now,
Thomas Smith, John Collins.
That's it. So many of God's other children were on the wrong side of history there, too. But now, do you think that will be celebrated as much as well And the other question is, do you think that Colin Kaepernick's protest, which was almost literally the same, just different venues, the same type of protest, do you think that will ever be celebrated as, quote unquote, the right thing to do?
I think history finds a way to justify itself because the people who are in charge of telling the story of history usually change over generations. One of the reasons I think that you're seeing this shift from 50 years ago with the corporate side of dealing with what Dr. King dealt with at the time, especially in Memphis, is the fact that the people that were running corporations at the time in 1968 are not the same people that they are now. So we witnessed growth.
Right.
And through growth came open-mindedness. So the companies may still be the same, but the people that are running it are not, for the most part. And that mindset has changed over the course of years. So we all know that the way corporations and a large part of America is embracing what Dr. King did and what he stood for 50 years ago is not the same as it was back then.
Right.
But one, we've seen change both physically and mentally as far as the way people appreciate what he did and what he stood for back then, because those people's fathers and their grandfathers and their mothers who taught them that what Dr. King stood for was against what was, in their minds, humanly right, those kids did not take on all of that mindset from their parents and their people. So now those people run the corporations now, and they're more open to it. So they have a better understanding of it. And I think the same thing might happen with Colin Kaepernick, where you're looking at corporations, starting with the NFL. And
starting with that one.
Right, starting with that one, looking at their banishment of them. 50 years from now, we don't know who's going to be, hell, we don't even know if the NFL is going to be around, but 50 years from now, we don't know who's going to be running the NFL. And much like some of the shift that's gone on, outside of sports and outside of, ownership, as far as business is concerned, I can't say there's going to be a Roger Goodell type running the NFL. I can't say there's going to be, a Steve Bannon type running, companies where you have some of the kids that are raised to know that this is wrong, that are right now maybe, 5 years old.
Right.
50 years from now, the companies that, are being run by, 5-year-old now, they'll be 50. 45, they'll be 50 at the time, and they're like, yo, we knew better than that.
Yeah.
That's
So
right. That's right.
I'm not going to bastardize Colin Kaepernick the way they did in, 2017 and 2018. That's
right.
not what we're about.
Right.
So it's the same shift that we saw Dr. King go through with America, and we're dealing with corporations. So to answer your question, I'm thinking that, if the trajectory stays the same, then it will be different. And you hope that it is different because that's what change is all about. Now, we as black folks always want an absolute change. We want America from a social standpoint and from a business standpoint to get everything that we are saying. And America never gets or swallows everything we're saying, so we don't always get all the change that we're looking for. But we get it in sections.
Yeah.
And we get it incrementally. So my hope is that 50 years from now, it will be totally different. And Colin Kaepernick will be appreciated and looked at much differently than he is not appreciated and not looked at right now.
This is R&R on Sports, and we're speaking with ESPN personality Scoop Jackson. Scoop, you bring up some you bring us some extremely high level thinking as it relates to these issues such as race and sports. I want to ask you, John Gruden, the new coach of the Los Angeles Raiders. Well, no, it's not Los Angeles Raiders. I guess it would be Las Vegas Raiders in a year or so, but right now it's still Oakland. He's made the comment that he's surprised that Colin Kaepernick hasn't gotten a job in the NFL. Do you think that was a setup for him bringing him into Oakland?
No, not at all, not necessarily. And because I hate to say this, it's not his call. He may have a vote, but ultimately it's not his call. And let's paint the situation. Like you said, if it's a setup, he can say what he wants to. But if ownership in Los Angeles or Vegas or Oakland, whatever we want to call the Raiders,
right?
If the ownership group of the Raiders says, yeah, John, you can say that, but we're not going to put him on the squad. Is John going to leave that contract?
No.
Nah.
It ain't gonna happen.
Thank you.
Right.
Come on.
Right.
John got a contract that every coach in professional sports wants right now.
Right.
And they're basing him to be not only just the coach, but the face and the marketing plan of this whole franchise.
Yep.
He is there. He represents right now that entire franchise. He's the one recognizable name that they're going to sell and preach, not only to coach the team, but to make us fall in love with them and make the general public like them. Mm-hmm. It's all on Gruden, which is smart. It works a lot of times. And hell, it worked in Boston. Until Boston got a squad together, they banked everything on Brad Stevens. Hey, we got this young coach in here, perfect young mind, we're going to do this. And then they started drafting players around us to help their identity. But in the beginning, Brad Stevens was the entire identity of the Celtics.
Mm-hmm,
and it wound up working out. The same thing can happen to John Gruden. But I say this about Gruden, even with that power, he doesn't have the final vote on what type of player he wants. In the Colin Kaepernick situation, where you have 31 other teams, and the ownership groups, not the coaches, the ownership groups are rallying together and saying, no, we don't want this dude in our league, and the commission is not pushing back on that.
Right.
Right. The ownership group is like, okay, John Gruden, you can want him, and if you want this to be a power play to put him on the squad, that's nice, but we're not going to do it.
Okay.
What course is John Gruden going to take?
Okay,
He's
Scoop.
not going to quit.
Scoop. One word answer.
So he has to follow that.
One word answer before we go to break.
It has no ground.
One word answer before we go to break. Will we see Colin Kaepernick in an NFL uniform next season? We'll be back.
Artivism.
Artivism features conversations with artists, creatives, and citizens working at the intersection of art and social activism. And I'm Linda Steele, your host. I'm a grant maker, change maker, social venture capitalist, and I invest in individuals and projects that use the arts as a vehicle for social change.
Artivism on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN! Riffin' on jazz.
I think I know a lot about jazz.
It's only what you've been doing the last 30-some years.
Yeah, I know.
A voice that can make you laugh and make you cry.
Good jazz, you don't have to worry about what they're talking about. But when they pick up those instruments, we all speak the same language. And don't you know you went in the kitchen and come back with a big bowl of salad?
Riffin' on jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network. ICONversation. ICONversation.
I'm just trying to get it, I ain't trying to die. No. She got a big ol' on your booty, make the world cry. In the kitchen, wrist twisted like it's stir fry.
We're back with more on our own sports. On our conversation today, we're talking to the great Scoop Jackson, ESPN personality. But wait a minute, before we went to break, we asked you about Colin Kaepernick.
My thing with Colin Kaepernick is please don't give him the luxury, of saying, hey, man, we let you back in. Like they're doing something right. I don't want that. I want him to, as much as I would like for him to continue to play football because that's what he wants to do, and the other, I think the stance that he wound up taking in this is so much bigger than that. And I really want the NFL, over the course of, like we said, of history, to not be let off the hook for their actions in this matter, ever.
What should he do, though?
And here, I'll say this as, and I might get in trouble with this, cool, but as sometimes you got to say stuff that's real.
All right, Jamel. All right,
Black
Jamel.
Americans in this country.
All right, Jamel.
No, but look, the one thing we have on our side in this country sometimes is the guilt factor.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And once the NFL lets Colin Kaepernick back in, you lose power within that guilt factor with the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But years from now, and we just talked about this earlier before the break, about what history will say 50 years from now, when the Colin Kaepernick day comes up the same way that Dr. King's death day comes up, the 50 year, the celebration of that.
Mm-hmm.
If they let him back in the NFL, do you know how that changes that narrative 50 years from now?
You're exactly right.
It waters it down, it diminishes it. But if he still never got back in, we got a point in history that we can always make them feel guilty about, because guess what? The same way they wound up feeling guilty about how they treated Muhammad Ali, the same way they feel guilty about how they treated Dr. King, that same guilt about, you know what, it's not about reparation, but yeah, we were wrong about that.
Mm-hmm.
If they let him back in NFL, you can't say we're wrong. We let him back in. I don't want to give the NFL or anybody the luxury of having to remove themselves from that guilt, because they should feel guilty for a long time about how they publicly treated him. So I hope not. And I hope on his side, it's not just them, I hope he doesn't go back. If they do throw that olive branch out to him, I hope he does say no. I hope he treats it the way that it should be treated. Well, I hope he treats them the same way they treated him, basically what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen,
why should I give you my service? I don't, it's just, and I'm not even going into the whole deeper, ownership, mentality of we still control, all that. That's we go deeper than that, but I don't even want to go there. I just hope that he understands, that for what he's done or what he's become, he doesn't need them. And please don't let them off the hook. So that's why I hope not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Listen, we want to move over into this NCAA. Listen, this is R&R on Sports, and we're speaking with Scoop Jackson of ESPN. NCAA championship recently was concluded with Villanova being the champion. What stood out to you? Being a man from Chicago, I'm sure Loyola Chicago was high on your radar. And Sister Jean, Sister Jean got a place on your mind.
Sister Jean laid hands on you yet?
Nah, she kind of laid her hands on everybody.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of rallied around her because, she's just really a great spirit. But being in Chicago, man, we didn't see any of this coming.
Right.
But we knew this team was good. Look, they won 28 games before the tournament started. They were really good. And there's a couple of cats from Chicago. Lucas Williamson and Devontae, what is Devontae? I'm messing up Devontae's name now. I'm thinking Devontae Graham from Kansas. Devontae Ingram from Simeon. So you had two public school kids, one from Whitney Young, one from Simeon, that we had been watching, and seeing their trajectory over the course of high school in the city and, wound up going to Loyola and playing ball. So there was an already vested interest in the squad. And we knew they were good. But we didn't expect this run, but the way they started winning, the first two days basically buzzer beaters. So they became the cardiac kids after the first week.
Right.
Right. And then for them to continue on that role and basically do what they did and play the way that they played, it galvanized the city once again. And with us not having championship expectations, but, the Cubs had their World Series hangover, and did not play well last year. So that championship, thing was gone. The Blackhawks had the worst season that they've had in my kids' lifetime.
Wow.
My kids, most Chicago people that are under the age of, 20 years old, they don't know the Blackhawks ever been bad before. They haven't seen it. They've grown this, a mini dynasty.
Right.
Every other year, Blackhawks going to win the Stanley Cup. So for them not to even make the postseason right now, I was like, oh my goodness. So Chicago was a little bit in the tailspin. And then came Loyola. And
right.
It's like, so that storyline kind of galvanized the city in a way unexpectedly that was really good. And for them to be like the Cinderella kids of this area. But they became Cinderella kids of a nation.
Oh, that's true.
Like
absolutely.
For 3 weeks.
I was pulling for them, that's for sure.
We were caught up in that as just like everybody else.
Now, let me ask you this. Larry, my partner Larry, and this is what I call a Southern backhand. Whenever you hear somebody say, Larry, bless his heart.
Oh, yeah.
That's a Southern backhand. We got that from our grandmas. Our grandmas say,
And grandmas would do it when they would look at the babies.
Yeah, the Leroy.
They look at babies and be like, they can't say the baby's cute.
Yeah, bless his heart. Leroy, bless his heart, ain't got the sense God gave a roach.
There it is, exactly.
So that's the way they do. So Larry, bless his heart, has this theory I want to ask you if you agree with. So he says that because of the whole one and done thing, that the ranks of major college programs have been decimated by one and done. So the teams that may be seeded higher or lower, which one is it? Higher seeded teams have an advantage because they have more mature players.
No, the teams that are seated lower.
Lower.
Yeah, because you got teams like Chicago, Loyola Chicago.
And they got juniors and seniors
playing. Versus the Dukes and the Kentuckys, they have freshmen and sophomores.
How do you feel about that?
Because those guys have typically been one and done.
You agree with that?
I mean, I think if we start to dissect it, I think, one, there's truth to that. But I don't think that's the end-all, be-all of everything. And I think if we start dissecting, we can find many different reasons of how this happened. And I don't think there's a one constant to make that true. Go back a couple of years to that Kentucky squad that won it. With Anthony Davis and crew on there, they were young.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You look at what happened a couple of years ago with Duke. With three freshmen, if you throw Grayson Allen in it.
Right.
You had Jaleel Okafor, Grayson Allen, and was it Tyler Ulis, I think.
Yep, Tyler Ulis.
No,
not Tyler Ulis. Tyler plays
Tyler
for
Jones.
Plays for Minnesota.
Right. Because his brother Trey Jones was McDonald's all right. So it's
right.
Jones. So, but those are three freshmen, at the time, and they won it. So I think it goes from year to year, and there's no one consistent, narrative that we could throw across the board and say, okay, the one and done has affected it, and now all teams that have juniors and seniors, regardless if they're, big schools or mid-majors or whatever, they have a better chance in winning it. Because I think if with the right one and done players, with the right freshman players, and the chemistry that the coach is able to develop over a short period of time, they can still win it. There's always still a chance, and history has proven that. But I think there's also something to that. So, I don't want to say, Larry, I think you're right to a certain degree, but I don't think there's enough consistency to make that hold true. Like, let's do this.
Of course. Now, I mean, there's no absolutes. There's no absolutes, and I totally agree with that. But but my thing is, it gives these Loyolas of Chicago's, the Western Kentuckys, some of these traditionally smaller D1 programs, it gives them the opportunity to compete because they hold on to their players for 3-4 years and actually develop. And on top of that, the players they're playing against men, because by the time you get 21, 22, your body is totally changing and it's more mature. So when you're talking about these 18, 19-year-olds, they're playing against guys that are physically more mature.
Do you think that was a factor in the national champion being Villanova and them having
Absolutely. I think Jay Wright has built the Duke of the next millennium, so to speak, because he's been able to create a program that's going to be built on players developing over time. Mm-hmm. Unlike Duke.
Oh, right,
Duke
but wait.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I hear, but let's be honest. Let's really be honest. Jalen Brunson and DiFrancesco, even though his foot was broken, and Booth, who scored 20 points in the championship game 2 years ago. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. They still won and were a big part of winning the national championship as freshmen.
Right.
If they wanted to, especially in Booth's situation, he could have gone to the NBA. He did a DiFrancesco, for lack of a better word. He had a 20-point game in national championship game 2 years ago. Even though Chris Jennings hit that shot, Booth still had it, and he might not have gotten drafted, but he still could have left because the timing was right. Now, did Booth have an impact that great on this team right now? He played a role, but did he have an impact on this team that great that had them win the national championship?
No.
He didn't play fantastic. He didn't play like a player you would expect to average 20 points as a junior that he did having that big game as a freshman.
Right.
So if he had gone, it may not have been a difference. But if Jalen Brunson had had a better year last year than he did, he would have left. So you can say he's a one-and-done or two-and-done, but after his sophomore year, if he had won Player of the Year and they had never won national championship last year and he had gone to the NBA, is Villanova winning right now? Hell no.
With that, we're going to put a pin on it. Listen, we're going to come back and we're going to finish up our conversation about the NCAA because I think the days of it being the NBA Developmental League is coming to an end. But we're going to talk about this on the other side with Robert Scoop Jackson of ESPN.
More iConversation next on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
We're back. with ICONversation, R&R on Sports, Robert Scoop Jackson. We were talking NCAA before the break, and were we done on that? You wanted to say something
my
about
thing
this?
is NCAA announced that they made over $1 billion last year in revenue. $1 billion in
nonprofit.
revenue. And the fact that they had to play, their labor is not getting a dime, I think is going to be a major issue. Now, we're seeing a rise up with youth today. And I believe that what's going to happen is that I believe that the NBA will allow first-year players or graduating seniors to come into the league, if not into the league, into the D or G League. And I think the NCAA will be hurt because I don't think players are going to stand for not being compensated when you're making $1 billion. Scoop, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with you, but my bigger concern or pushback to a certain degree, because I agree with you, but the pushback in that I've always believed that the NCAA has done a decent job over the last decade in maintaining some type of working relationship with the NBA. And there is somewhat of a partnership there.
Yes.
I don't know if the NBA, with having the NCAA as a governing body, alongside with them, are going to just cut ties with them like that, knowing that they can affect their brand and their corporate structure by changing the rules and knowing that changes the rule and how it's going to affect NCAA basketball. I think because of the relationship there, that the NBA is always going to find a way to make sure the moves that they make are going to be moves that are not going to sink the NCAA as a governing body as far as getting talent to come there. So where I think there will be some change, I don't think it'll be a total change where the NBAs are going to allow, hey, you know what? We're going to let high school players come back in, or we're going to let them come straight to the D League, and they can basically just skip the NCAA.
All right, hold on. This is R&R on Sports. This is R&R on Sports, and I want to hear from Scoop exactly what do you think might be the solution that we will see coming forward from the NBA as it relates to that partnership with the NCAA?
I don't know, because I think the NBA, from an ownership standpoint, in this whole situation as far as age restrictions, is full of, you fill in the next two letters. Because basically what they have done and this has always been my point of view, and this is something like Chris Broussard and I differ on this, and we've differed publicly about this, is to me the NBA, because they have in their collective bargaining agreement age restrictions, they put the nuance of the punishment of this restriction on the players, but the owners are the ones still drafting them.
Right.
The players cannot draft themselves.
Right.
Basically what you're doing is the men who own the teams can't control themselves when they see this talent, but you're punishing the players for basically just doing what nature does and getting older. They refuse to put the punishment on the owners. Those are the ones that are in control who you get into the league. They're the gatekeepers.
Right.
So I always have a problem with the age restriction because it's misplaced as far as who's getting punished on it. So, what the NBA, you asked me what I think the NBA is going to do. I'm so far beyond what they're going to do. I think they've been wrong about this the entire time.
I agree.
What I've always said is, to be fair, they can remove the age restriction, but put a luxury tax or penalty tax on teams that draft players under the age of 19. Like, if you want the player that bad, you just got to pay for it. That's it. It's really simple. So if there's a LeBron James, or right now, if there's a Colin Sexton, look, Colin Sexton is 20 years, whatever. We don't have an age limit of you coming in, but if the Charlotte Hornets, and no disrespect to Kemba Walker, I'm not saying he's getting replaced, but I'm saying if the Charlotte Hornets, or let's say the Atlanta Hawks, there you go. Right. The Atlanta Hawks want Colin Sexton because they need a point guard. Okay, we don't have an age restriction. You can get in. But anybody that has not completed 2 years of college, or anybody that is under the age of 20 years old, if you want to come into the league, fine. But there's a $5 million tax you have to pay as an owner of a team to get this player. Now it's like, hey, the team got to think twice now. Is Colin Sexton really worth us paying this $5 million? Hell yes, he is. Let's get him.
I still say that's penalizing the players, though.
You're not punishing the kids.
Yeah, you actually are. You still punishing. You're making it a barrier to bringing in young players into the league. So I would say that's still.
Did you hear what I said earlier? You're not totally destructing the NCAA by doing that.
Yes, absolutely.
That's part of the partnership.
Yeah, but I would.
All you're doing is forcing the owners who have total control over whether you get into a league or not, pay for your value. That's it.
This is R&R on Sports, and we're speaking with the great Scoop Jackson of ESPN.
I think that's very, very important because what was not factored in that theory would be relationships. And the relationship between the NCAA and the NBA is thick, is tight, is strong.
Absolutely.
There's a huge bond there.
Hey, fellas, on the other side of this, the NCAA, they're culpable as far as this is concerned, too. Because if I'm a player, why am I going there? Because I'm not being compensated. Like you said, you make millions of dollars, and I'm not being compensated at all. So where is their role in this?
Well, I think
the NBA is doing wrong, it's the NCAA doing wrong.
I think we're seeing
some.
some.
Come to the board about how they're going to change that structure.
I think we're seeing some, Scoop. I think with the young man that's the blue chip guy, was it Brazeley, that is decided to go to the G League instead of going to college. I really believe that we're going to see more of that. And with the increased salaries of the NBA, the NBA G League, I think we're going to see more high school players jumping in.
I think you're going to see a little of it, but I don't think it's going to set a standard.
Okay.
Well, it all depends on if the NBA decides to draft from there. And as much we talked about, collusion going on with the NFL and how they got together and made sure that Colin Kaepernick was not going to be a part of the NFL this season.
Right.
Don't think that the NBA owners won't do the same thing. And I know there's a vested interest in the G League.
Right.
But if you're a player and decide to skip college and go to the G League, if that's not their number one source for drafting talent, then, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot. Because the owners have to agree that, all right, you know what, our first dip into the talent pool is now going to be the G League. If they decide not to do that, then you're saying the same way they have decided basically not to draft anybody that's a junior.
Right.
I don't care how good you are. They're drafting on potential as opposed to talent.
Right.
Don't think they haven't sat around and made this decision like, hey, you know what? This is how we're going to do this.
And
that's why players are coming out early. So if the G League is not going to be their first dip into the pool, then I don't see a change coming.
Let's spend our last few minutes talking about your observations of the NBA.
Well, first, this is R&R on Sports, and we're speaking with Scoop Jackson of ESPN.
Thank you very much.
I had to do that.
Okay.
I'm so talented.
Okay. I'm so talented.
I'm so talented.
Way to go, Trump. Way to go, Don John. So talk to us about NBA playoffs, predictions. Who's the MVP?
I think James is the MVP, first off.
Man, please. For what? What has he done? What has he done versus LeBron? LeBron is the MVP, period.
I beg to differ.
I'm so sick of him being a LeBron James suck-up. I don't know what to do.
Listen, I think individually LeBron is having maybe possibly his best season ever across the board.
At year 15.
But the one thing he hasn't done is make his team
better.
Not really better, but play at a potential we know they have the ability to play at.
Well, first you're trying to integrate a guy with a bad hip. Now, we know he had a bad hip because now he's gone and got surgery. So you got that. Then you had the aging players as well. And now you had a wholesale change, adding in Nance, Clarkson, Hood, and George Hill. So you got four new players at midseason.
But when you get through with all of that, he still has not done for the team. As the point Scoop is making is he hadn't done for the team what James Harden has done. What James Harden has done for the Rockets in terms of lifting them up to where
I would say the difference is Chris Paul in Houston. I would say the difference is Chris Paul, not James Harden.
Difference is Chris Paul. But
James Harden is the same player he was last year. He's the same player he was the year before that. There's no difference. The only difference is you have Chris Paul.
Here's the other thing. I hear what you're saying about all the problems that went in Cleveland and why they're either third or fourth in the East right now. But what's going to make it bad for LeBron is the fact that Boston lost an all-star in Gordon Hayward day one of the season, and they're still better than Cleveland.
That's true. That's very true. But I would still say you got a system in place. You got a system in place with Brad Stevens, which is touted. He should definitely be the coach of the year. And then you also have an all-star, all-world, maybe possibly an all-time great in Kyrie Irving that carried them through the first part. Now we see Kyrie, as always, you see Kyrie cannot sustain a full season, which he's never done since Duke, which is surprising to me that no one has really pointed this out. This guy has never lasted a whole season in his career since arriving at Duke. But
guess what? You're proving my point. Even with that in place, and don't think that. Look, Tyronn Lue has a system in place too. So don't get Brad Stevens saying he has to. Tyronn Lue has won a championship, so there's some type of system in place. But you're proving my point. Kyrie hasn't been around the whole time, and they're still better than Cleveland.
Yeah, but I mean, you got a guy who's the general manager, you got a guy who's the coach, and you got the guy who's the leading scorer, leading rebounder, leading blocks, leading steal. I mean, the man is carrying 7 positions for the Cleveland Cavaliers. You got to give him the MVP. He's the best executive.
But look answer the question. When the season started out, even without all these changes, we knew that LeBron had done some, GM stuff on his own, and they did lose my man David Griffin.
Okay, one quick before you leave. Is LeBron in Cleveland next year?
Damn.
And that's the answer.
That's the only answer I got is just damn.
Scoop, we want to thank you for being with us yet again on R&R on Sports. And we got to have you back soon, man. This is too fun. This is too much fun not to repeat at every opportunity. So we thank you for being with us. We thank you, the listeners, for being with us here on R&R on Sports iConversation.
All the best to you, brother.
And we'll be back.
Anytime. Best to y'all, too, man.
All right, man. Take care.
Getting money, never stumbling. Need more, that's why she burn friend. Spend a few blue hundreds.
The off-year electorate, the midterm electorates, are older, less diverse, more conservative. You have 2 electorates fighting for the future of this country. And what I'd say to your viewers and people listening in is, you know what? You got to stop that older, less diverse electorate from funking around with your future.
Funking up your airwaves and jamming the good information in your ear. Once again, it's Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
Hey, this is your guy, DC. Funky Politics. We're back. A brand new season, brand new shows, brand new guests. We're going to do it just right. Right here on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
And we are back. We don't want to be short-sighted and not mention the fact that NBA...
Short-sighted. I was told that I was nearsighted.
NBA great.
You got short-sighted. I got nearsighted.
Hardaway is now the head basketball coach at his alma mater, the University of Memphis.
So let me ask you this. You're a longtime Memphis fan.
Yes.
Now, you are a longtime Memphis fan.
I am. I'm a Memphis State fan to show you how long
Check
time
that out.
I am.
Check that out.
Yes.
So let me ask you this.
So your question.
The question. You ready?
I'm ready. You better hurry.
Does Lil Penny become an assistant coach?
We understand that Lil Penny is going to show up.
So Lil Penny going to be there with the
road up? Lil Penny is showing up, and I'll tell you somebody else who is showing up, and this was just announced.
Yeah.
Guess who one of his assistants is going to be?
Tell me what's up.
Mike Miller. and he is still yet a player, an active player in the NBA.
Absolutely.
But
That's
not for long.
I will say this, man. Congratulations for you guys getting University of Memphis great Penny Hardaway. But you know me. I bleed the red. So it's all about the Cardinals, baby. Louisville Cardinals will be back. We got Chris Mack as a
will
coach.
they be back?
Yeah, we got Chris Mack as a coach, man. I got to roll with them, but, you know, I feel like I'm getting stabbed in the back. But nevertheless,
bringing in some new girls to dance in the dorm. That's going to be the key.
Well, we got that's
going to be the key.
Yeah, well, you know, that's what's up.
The parties
man. You know
in the dorm are going to be the key.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So all you recruits to U of L,
you know, you might get a little something extra.
Sunshine is coming. And with that,
she's on the way.
We're going to thank you for being with us here on R&R on Sports. Remember, we're here every week, and don't ever leave us. Please stay with us. Talk about it.
Listen, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. Listen, you can go anywhere and find us. We ubiquitous. We everywhere. We everywhere. And everywhere.
I like that.
You like that?
I like that. I like that. Let's take your ubiquitous butt up out of here.
iConversation. Executive producer Larry Robinson. Produced at KUDZUKIAN Studios in Memphis, Tennessee. iConversation. Part of the KUDZUKIAN Network.
I've been playing cards with the house money. 21 Grammys, I'm a savage. 21 Grammys, I'm a savage. I shoot even word back with 12 solo albums all platinum.